8th day of October, and the year remains 2021. Of course, as I said earlier on, we're going to be conducting a very special interview with folks from the National Commission. As a matter of fact, there is this document they want to explain to something about the 2023 elections that talks about the assessment or to inform the successful conduct of electoral constituency redistricting for 2023 general election. So they're going to be telling us more the importance, why now, and other relevant informations you will need to know as Liberians or electorates out there. So first, good morning. My name is Julius Gbokie. Without much ado, let me say good morning to all of you in studio this morning. We have Mr. Archie Delaney Senior. He's the advisor on delimitation at the National Elections Commission, and we have Mr. Michael B. Monge, who is a GIS director at the National Elections Commission as well. So good morning and welcome to it. Let me quickly go across the table and say good morning to my special studio guest this morning. Good morning, Mr. Delaney. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning. It's good to be on your program.
Good I go close to the microphone a bit so we can get you loud and clear.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Morgan, Mr. Michael B. Morgan, good morning as well.
Yeah, good morning.
You need to also go closer a bit so that we can get you. Okay, that's good. So welcome to this special interview here on Sky 107.1 FM. So let's go into it. What is this about boundary delimitation? I think Mr. Delaney need to go into that quickly for us.
Yes. Good morning. Welcome all viewers of Liberia, here in the nation, in the diaspora. Boundary delimitation is a process that is in conformity with the legal framework of the Republic of Liberia, mainly the Constitution of Liberia and the elections laws. Now, under the Constitution of Liberia, Article 80, Section D,
okay,
it says that, I'm quoting, in Section E, I will do Section E, then I will do Section D. Okay. It says, immediately following a national census and before the next election, the Elections Commission shall reapportion the constituencies in accordance with the new population figures so that every constituency shall have as close to the same population as possible.
Okay.
Provided, however, that our constituency must be solely within a country. Now, we know that next year, the Liberian Institute of Statistics for Geoinformation Services will be conducting the national population census.
Okay.
So this constitutional provision triggers the delimitation of constituencies, the reapportionment of constituencies for the process. So that is why the NEC is planning to do. And Section E, Section E says, that's Article 30, Section D, each constituency shall have an approximately equal population of 20,000 or more of citizens, as the legislature shall prescribe in keeping with population growth and movement as reviewed by a national census, provided that a total number of electoral constituencies in the Republic shall not exceed 100. So the NEC is gearing up for this process to fulfill constitutional mandate.
Okay, let me come in there quickly. You talked about national census, and the census is yet to be done.
Yes.
Next year we'll be having census in Liberia.
Yes.
When exactly do you doing this? Is it after the census next year or before the census?
No, it has to be after the census because the Constitution is clear, stipulated in or Section E. It says immediately following a national census before the next elections. So this has to be done after the population figure has been reviewed. And as per also the Constitution, it says that the national legislature will prescribe a population threshold. And it is this population threshold that will be used to determine how many or seats in the House of Representatives that each county will be allocated.
Okay. All right. So so that is it means that you don't have a specific time because the census will be next year. We don't know the time yet when going to be conducted. So it means that is it immediately after the census, or maybe you give it a time frame before you start that the whole process?
No, it has to be immediately after the census.
After the result of the census.
Yeah, after the results of the census. However, boundary delimitation is extremely complex, highly technical, time consuming, with serious implications because of the complexities associated with the delimitation itself. You have social, political, technical, or context that makes this process very difficult. So why the apportionment will take place after the census is conducted, the results are released, and the national legislature prescribe a population figure. However, between now and the time the census results are expected to be released by probably June next year, there is a lot of work that have to take place before then. In fact, 90% of all resources of this process is actually done before the legislature even prescribe the population threshold. So that is why the NEC is already geared up and running to start doing the preparation for this process.
So let me go to Mr. Morgan. Now, you are the director, GIS director. I want to ask you, what is the importance of the whole delimitation process? What's the importance?
The importance of the delimitation process is to ensure that people are within a particular constituency or their constituency, so that the plotting of centers, people have access to the constituents you are in and where you are registered, so that in terms of assigning of voters, you find yourself within a particular constituents, and you will be able to follow your constituents and make a decision.
So what's the difference between constituents and a district? That I think we need to clarify. They're the same thing or what?
The first thing is electoral district is illegal.
Electoral district.
Yeah, electoral district is illegal. We don't even want to go into that.
It's
so
illegal,
much.
And we still using it.
It's illegal. It was only unique for the 2005. Since after the war we came, there was no census data at the time, and so we have to do something to start our Liberia moving. But onward, we can continue to move in that illegal stuff. So now the Constitution gave us that mandate that legis is sole authority. After census, every 10 years, you conduct the census, and we at the NEC use the census data to do constituencies. So we're not going back to electoral district.
So that means, I'm not cutting you off, that means we're going to say goodbye to this whole thing about district and coming to constituents.
Yeah, we're going to say goodbye to it.
For the 2023 election.
Precisely. For the 2023 and onward election. Onward election.
Okay. Yeah. And onward elections.
Yeah.
Mr. Delaney, I come back to you. How will the whole stuff be done? Are you going to visit districts and say, okay, let's say, for example, District 17, one of the bigger districts, we're standing right here, we'll cut it, give you District 18 or whatsoever. How are you going to be done?
Well, one of the things, as my colleague just stated, the concept of districts, electoral districts, or electoral districts, as he rightly said, is not statutory.
And we're using it.
Yes, because of expediency. Just to give some background information, or after the comprehensive peace agreement in Akasumbu, Ghana.
Yeah.
Because let me just read a provision from the new elections, the electoral reform.
Okay.
The electoral reform of 2004. Now, what it did was that it had to suspend Article D of the Constitution, which says that you must do constituency and then it must have this amount of population. There was no reliable figures.
Okay.
So because there were no reliable figures, the UN were the main ones who conducted the elections. So the United Nations with the international communities, the other stakeholders came and said it's not practical to hold elections based on the Constitution. So besides unreliable population figures, because a lot of people were displaced, and there was also a major challenge of electoral of the boundaries of administrative units.
Okay.
At that time, people didn't know where the boundaries were. That was why even the 2005 electoral district had no boundaries. They were simply, you take the 5, 6, 7 centers and you call them one electoral district, but they had no boundary. Now, what is supposed to happen now? Honor the provisions. The preparation that must take place is that Michael talked about the legislation doing preparation for the census. And the census data that the NEC will use together with the boundaries that will be derived that are statutory by law to a portion. Now, you talked about, now, the reason why I brought this up is because you talked about, district this, going to district this.
Okay, so before we go to the importance of the process, I want to ask you, you talk about specific figures allocated to probably, not allocated to districts.
Yes.
Are you telling me that when we come to constituency, we're going to have a specific figure that will be made up in the constituents?
Yes. In our constituency is based on population.
Okay.
Electoral districts were based on voter registration figures.
Okay.
So now, you can be living one place and you register in another place. So voter registration figures do not give the actual representation
of that district.
Of the distribution of population. Is actually or census or national census that will capture that exercise. So once you do the national census, based on where people live, that is the figure you are going to use. And when you do constituency, one of the things that sadly have begun to happen in Liberia is that when I listen to the talk shows like you and where people are calling in, I'm John Brown, I'm calling from district number 11. I'm Peter, I'm calling from district number 15. There is no place in Liberia called district 15. People need to start to get to understand that constituencies are basically for representation, equal representation in a house of representatives, so that your voice, you have equal voice with everybody for the formulation and the enactment of laws. So that's what it's basically about. Because every 10 years, based on the population figures, the Elections Commission will reapportion constituency, and communities that were joined together before, in the next or reapportionment, they could find out they are different or they are not combined with another community. Okay. And these things are temporary. They take place every 10 years. However, your community, your administrative unit, those ones do not change. Your districts are your district. Your clans are your clans. So that is how you want development to be planned and managed, because this thing is only temporary.
So you talked about the censor.
Yes.
The censor will give you the actual persons that are in a constituency.
Yes.
And that is after legislature have finished the whole censor, they're going to give you the information.
Yes.
As NEC.
Yes.
To use it as a working tool.
Exactly.
Now, when you are using that as a working tool to probably do the redistricting or so like that, maybe get a constituency, I want to ask this question. Is it going to stop the trucking of people? Because you want to know exactly the amount of persons that live in that constituency.
Now, the actual voter registration is another thing. Now, the good thing about the constitution is that by law, article, let me get that, in the Constitution, or article, the same article 80, section E of the Liberian Constitution says every citizen shall have the right to be registered in a constituency. So it is when the constituencies have been reapportioned and delimited, you know the boundaries. So where you live,
it's where you register.
Where you live, you know that I fall within this community. It falls within the constituency. So you encourage the people who live within that area
to vote,
to register in the centers that are assigned to that area. Unfortunately, our laws does not compel you or constrain that where you live, you must register there. So somebody may live here and choose to go and be registered somewhere else. To be registered somewhere else. So that is, those are some of the weaknesses that are in the system that probably in reform that needs to be looked at by the stakeholders, because these things can obscure and give a false impression of representation.
So let me go back to Mr. Morgan, Mr. Makia B. Morgan. So tell me, how will this entire process impact the election in 2023? Maybe you want to tell us a bit about that. Maybe after that, Mr. Delaney also coming.
Thank you very much. The process, number one, it will impact the election in that you will have a true representation of people within a constituent.
Okay.
All right. You have people who register in our constituents will be assigned to a particular precinct in terms of extending the voter rules and all that stuff. You'll be able to account for people within our constituents, and their voice will be heard.
Okay.
Within their constituents. All right. Another thing is that the process that leads to constituency delimitation starts now, and we are collaborating with legislators to ensure that all of those issues in terms of boundary overlaps and using their EA, which is the unit we're going to use to form the constituents, are clearly defined, so that you can have somebody cross-cutting a particular EA, cross-cutting two clans or chieftain.
Okay.
So when you have all of those things clearly defined on the ground, you find out that you have a balanced constituents. You have people assigned to those constituents and their precinct. They assigned to them, and I think it's a good start.
Okay, you want to do a follow up there, Mr. Delaney?
Yes, or electoral constituency delimitation for me and for elections experts.
How will it impact the election?
Yes. Yeah. It is the most critical process in the entire elections.
Okay.
This is the most critical process. Errors in constituency delimitation, it will flow into voter registration.
Okay.
It will flow into the other electoral processes. And it has the potential to misrepresent election results. For instance, if the boundaries that we use, the administrative boundaries, are wrong, you could take a whole portion of a district and assign it to another district. And the people in that portion may be supporters, or it may be a stronghold of one of the candidates, but then you have assigned it by error. Because the boundaries that you use are wrong. So that person, his supporters are now in another constituency and they can't vote for him. So automatically the delimitation will change the election result.
Okay.
And if you have errors in the boundary, where you place those voter registration centers, they will automatically assign the voter registration in those places to the wrong districts. So this is the most critical process. It is the most complicated. It is the most frustrating. Because of these things, it can change. It can cause election results to change by error. So that is why the NEC very early on. And the reason why I brought in the boundary is because it is one of the most major impediment to the delimitation of constituency. In jurisdiction like this, Liberia is a post-conflict country, and it also is a nascent or young democracy that has a history of very poor democratic governance. So all these things playing, all these contextual issue playing together, it makes the process extremely complicated. We have places in which, Michael was telling me, the 2017 election, 2 counties fought over 1 center. They said the center was in the county. Where was that?
Yeah, that was Bapulu.
That was
Bapulu.
That was Bapulu.
Yeah.
Because so these two counties were fighting.
So you want to get rid of that?
Yes.